In 1904, Mayor of New York City, George B. McClellan Jr. began a revolution as the first conductor of the New York City subway stretching from the northern to southern end of Manhattan Island. The ride felt like a whimsy as he maneuvered the barreling train down its tracks, joyfully insisting, "I'm running this train." To the hundreds of thousands of passengers who rode the line on its first day, it was perceived as a technological marvel that would simply reform everyday transportation and life itself more conveniently. No one would come to predict, though, just how revolutionary the system would be. Not just for the city's inhabitants, but its future as a bustling metropolis. Mayor McClellan hadn't approved the costly construction of this subway line arbitrarily. Decades prior, through trial and error, the city realized that to survive and thrive, an underground subway system would be mandatory. New York City's public transit system began operations in the 1850s. New York City stood as an immigrant gateway, emerging as a central hub of the nation's rapidly growing industrial profile. Population within Lower Manhattan surged, and solutions were needed to offload density into the sparser regions of Northern Manhattan and the Bronx. They came in the form of the omnibus, streetcar, and elevated railroad. The first elevated railroad appeared on Greenwich Street in Manhattan in the 1860s. Not long after, the sky above Manhattan became filled with steel. In the 1880s, elevated service extended up into the Bronx, and it seemed like there would be the long-sought revolutionary solution to the issue of transportation in the city. In 1888, a disaster struck that would shatter this belief and give rise to new calls for reform: a blizzard, 80-mile-per-hour winds, and snowdrifts as high as 30 feet. The elevated rail lines, completely exposed to the elements, were revealed to be especially vulnerable to this event. Trains became encased in snow, rails were glossed over in ice, and circuitry was destroyed. New York City's marvel of public transportation was utterly incapacitated in a span of mere hours, and with it, the city came to a halt. Throughout the 1890s, the city and its constituents spared no time in pushing for a newfound solution: a complete overhaul of city transportation through an underground system free from the influence of the harsh elements. The Rapid Transit Act of 1891 created the Rapid Transit Railroad Commission. 1894 saw voters in a referendum, voting in favor of the reform that a subway would bring, and in 1897, the Rapid Transit Act was extended to allow means of financing the system. Groundbreaking began in 1900, with a cut-and-cover construction technique being efficiently used to lay 9 miles of track and construct 28 stations within the short span of 4 years. By 1904, the subway was ready for use and would begin making headways in transforming and revolutionizing the city. The first line was operated by the Interborough Rapid Transit Company, also known as the IRT. Ridership continued to surge as the revolutionary system swept across the city, and the IRT continued to develop its cars to raise safety and capacity standards. In the early 1900s, the Brooklyn Rapid Transit Company arrived, having been consolidated from separate Coney Island and Brooklyn railroads. BRT and IRT held large profit margins, and as a result, there was little incentive to take risky gambles on expansion. In 1913, Manhattan Borough President George McKennedy sought to resolve this. He brokered the dual contracts between the two corporations, thereby revolutionizing the system by massively increasing capacity. It was a $200 million deal that contributed to the construction of dozens of stations in underserved boroughs and to a rise in ridership as people reacted to the change. Before the contracts, Brooklyn had 4 stations. Afterwards, they had 189. Queens went from having no stations to 41. This reshaped where New Yorkers could live and work. Despite facing early success, the IRT and BRT still faced challenges. The 5-cent fare limit imposed by the dual contracts backfired on them after World War I's inflation, as the system became more costly to maintain. The BRT went bankrupt in 1918 and was replaced by the BMT in 1923. Mayor Hyland, who took office in 1918, would begin the movement that would kill the private operators. A major advocate for a unified system under the city, he blocked proposals to raise fares. He spent money on building a city-owned system in direct competition with IRT and BMT strongholds. After years of construction, the independent subway system officially opened in 1932. It was a remarkable project, costing twice as much as the combined BMT and IRT costs. The system earned a good reaction from constituents, as its well-funded nature gave it an edge over the private operators. The Great Depression put the final nail in the coffin of the private companies. In 1940, all three previously competing systems were unified into one, controlled by the New York City Board of Transportation. This fundamental change allowed the subway to recover with proper funding and helped it fulfill its role as a revolutionary part of New York City life. During World War II, it moved workers, soldiers, and manufactured goods across the city, overcrowding surged, demonstrating to everyone that the subway wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity.
I say, why don't we do more about subways? I find they don't know what the hell they're talking about. What do they mean, more subways? You can't build any more subways.
Robert Moses Authority emerged post-World War II as a competitor to subway funding with the philosophy of using roads and bridges to counter the financial juggernaut of New York City subway transit. His ideology to reform transportation was to add another lane to the highways. With his political influence and strong public image, he routed funds towards constructing highways and bridges. Projects like the Bronx-Whitestone Bridge were built in record time. However, these roadway expansions came at the expense of the subway.
Subways. And a subway. Subway.
Broken down trains.
To combat this problem under funding, the control of the subway shifted to the New York Transit Authority, which relied on fare hikes. These fare hikes sparked a negative reaction, and although the price of the subway increased, the quality of ridership was starting to decline. This was visibly evident by the late 70s. The subway became a target for graffiti artists, making them moving canvases. Vandals would go to subway cars during the night and tag the cars. These acts represent the decline in the subway and changing subway reputation. In addition to graffiti, violent crime also increased on subway cars and stations. The economic instability and increased poverty, along with under-policing and the decay of the stations, created the perfect scenario for increased violent crime underground. By 1984, the physical decline of the rails had birthed a far more dangerous crisis, an epidemic of fear. The subway had become a symbol of lawlessness, and public frustration was desperately searching for an outlet. It found one in Bernard Goetz. New York City was extremely unsafe during this time. Some passengers felt the need to carry guns. As a result, tragedies like this would occur. Bernard Goetz, fearing for his life in what he thought was a robbery, shot 4 teenagers in an act of self-defense. This act of vigilante justice brought mixed reactions and a push for safety reforms. Although slow and hard-fought, change finally arrived. Reform came through the expansion of the New York Transit Police and anti-graffiti campaigns. By 1989, the subways were declared graffiti-free. Cameras and emergency intercoms were installed to help prevent and catch future crimes. Tracks, signals, stations, and cars received major improvements and upgrades as money was diverted back into the system. By the 1990s and early 2000s, the crime rate in the subway dropped dramatically. The confidence in and image of the subway was finally recovering after years of painstaking labor. Although the subway still faces systemic issues like financial debt and aging infrastructure, it has steadily recovered through massive reform efforts since its late 20th century decline. The subway system continues to expand and recover. The MTA now serves as the city's primary transit coordinator across the bus, rail, and subway networks. Evidence of this is clear. Ridership surged to post 1950 records in 2011 and reaches more than 1 billion every year from 2022. Far from a relic of the past, the New York City subway remains a revolutionary force for urban connectivity. Its continued expansion does not just transport millions of riders, it connects people, unifying them to sustain the city's identity as a unified, ever-evolving metropolis.